Hello there everybody, this is Silent Mist and welcome back. It is the next day, but it is not the beginning of the next day. It is 7 o'clock, and like I said yesterday, I'm gonna watch Game of Thrones. And we watched Game of Thrones. We watched the rest of Season 2. 5 episodes of Game of Thrones. Now, in terms of anime, 5 episodes isn't that much, but in terms of Game of Thrones, wow. We watched a lot of Game of Thrones. So far so good. I liked it. It was pretty good. Still had that one moment where I was just like, what's happening? But no spoilers. No spoilers whatsoever. But yesterday I overclocked this computer, or at least I tried to overclock this computer a little bit more, and ran into a lot of stability issues and ended up bumping the speed just a teeny tiny little bit more, and it's nothing fantastic, but it is slightly better. Stress testing right now with Prime 95, and the one thing I wanted to try to do was to see how hot it would get, and wow, this thing is running very, very cool. Well, actually it's not, but compared to what my other desktop runs at, it's running very, very cool. So I think I could probably push it a little bit more. I want to get this thing to 4 gigahertz, but I've been having difficulty doing that. It does not want it to be stable, and it crashes very, very easily after it goes above 3.5, 3.6 gigahertz, and even after I start pumping like ludicrous amounts of power into it, it just doesn't want to go any faster. And makes me sad because right here you see that the revision is C0/C1. So I believe that's the same as the stepping. So whenever a processor gets released, it usually goes through a bunch of revisions. Like in the case of that particular processor, at one point there was revision 0, which is the engineering sample, which is non-consumer available. It's given to a few people before the chip is released. And then comes the A0 stepping, the B0 stepping, then what I have, the C0 stepping, and then the D0 stepping, at least for that one. So A and B, basically the later it is, the later, or the higher the letter. Is that how you describe letters in letter order? The later it was produced. And usually the later a chip is produced, the better it will overclock, or the better it will run given the amount of power that it has. Usually. Not always true, but in the case of these, the C0 and the D0 i7 920s overclock very well. The D0s extraordinarily well. Unfortunately, this specific revision C0 chip overclocks like crap. I was able to bump it from, I believe, stock it runs 2.7 gigahertz, and now it's running at 3.5. And people with the D0 revisions can easily get this thing up to like 4.2 gigahertz, and I wish I could do that, because then that thing would be pretty darn fast, especially considering how cheap it is. But unfortunately, mine does not like getting cranked up past 3.6 gigahertz without really crapping out. Like, wow, it does not run well. But yeah, so far it is surviving the stress test, and if it were easier to like test this out, I would just bump it up and just start working backwards. But the problem is, when the overclock fails on this computer, unlike the other desktop, which does it the right way, so with the other desktop, you overclock it, and you overclock it poorly, it crashes, it resets all the settings, you can try again. So it crashes twice. If it doesn't start up twice from a cold boot, it'll revert all the BIOS settings back to stock, so you can get back into the BIOS and change everything. That's great. This computer, however, if you go out of bounds or something, if you just make it, push it too hard, it will, it'll just crash, and crash, and crash, until you open it up, press a button on the motherboard, and turn it back on. So that extra step right there makes it really annoying to figure out, or to find the optimal overclock, because basically, you're just, you try something, you turn it on, it doesn't turn on, you have to get on the ground, the button is, I don't even know if I can show it to you, it's between the power supply and the bottom graphics card, so there's barely any space, and it's just annoying to deal with, but who knows. I, at some point, will probably try to push this further, because given the temperature that it's running at, this thing, I would be comfortable with this approaching 90 degrees while running Prime 95, but right now it's not even hitting 70, so yeah, this definitely has a bit more headroom. So maybe I'll give it a try in the future, but for now, it's just going. It's just going as fast as it can. I like this computer, even though it is kind of finicky. But yeah, I think in a little bit Max is going to be coming over and we're going to be having dinner. So that'll be fun. Hi, Max! You're like not even in frame. I just zoomed in and held the camera in your general direction. You got like the top of his head. Max is here. We're gonna have dinner. And Windows is being installed onto the laptop. Onto that laptop, which lost like every right to exist after that laptop came into existence. But now it's gaining everything back one step at a time. But what you working on, Max?
I'm trying to set up display settings for CSGO.
So much. Oh, such a nice laptop. So thin. Like the giant tank that is both Mary's and mine's.
5 pounds, 980 M.
It's like as heavy as this. I think actually this is like 6 pounds if I recall. 6 or 5 or 4, 5 or 6, somewhere in that range. But
16 gig RAM version. Yeah.
It's a good laptop. It's probably like on par with my desktop, to be honest. It's not bad. It's not bad. Definitely better than this thing. But making pasta. There is some meatball cooking over here. I should probably turn this down a little bit because that is boiling like there's no tomorrow. And just normal pasta, and it'll all be done in about a minute. I'm excited.